Here are my grades for every Premier League club's transfer window this winter, in alphabetical order. I gave Arsenal a C for their grade in their winter transfer window. They made one signing this window, buying Austin Trusty from the Colorado Rapids in the MLS for about £1.5 million, who was immediately sent back on loan to Colorado to continue his development. They would get rid of Aubameyang, Chambers, and Kolasinac all for free transfers and would loan out Pablo Mari, Ainsley Maitland-Niles, and Folarin Balogun. Overall, the positives of their transfer business this window were that they got rid of some dead wood that were making too much money, especially Aubameyang. The negative side of this window was they did not fix their biggest hole in their squad, being the striker position. I think the negatives equal the positives here, making it a C grade. I gave Aston Villa an A+ grade for their transfer window. They made 4 signings loaning Felipe Coutinho and Robin Olsen, made a free transfer for Callum Chambers, and purchased Lucas Digne for £25 million. They would get rid of 3 players on loan to lower their wage bill, loaning out Matt Targett, Wesley, and Anwar Al Ghazi. The positives to their transfer window are upgrading their left back with Digne, bringing in an amazing talent in Coutinho, and getting 2 signings to help squad depth. I really see no negatives in their transfer business this window. The positives completely outweigh the negatives, giving them an A+ grade for their business. I gave Brentford a B grade for their transfer window. They made 2 signings, bringing in the amazing attacking midfielder and Christian Eriksen for free, and would loan in a backup keeper named Jonas Lassell. They would get rid of Mads Bistrup, Charlie Good, and Marcus Frost on loan this window to help them in the development process. The positive for this window is clear. They brought in a player of Eriksen's quality for free, which is already a great success. However, the main negative I have for their window was their lack of investment in the defensive side of the game. They are giving up way too many goals and need a new player in defense. However, the positives outweigh the negatives here, having them finish with a B grade, a very solid transfer window. I gave Brighton a C+ grade for their transfer window. They made 2 signings, bringing in Deniz Undav and Kasper Kozlowski. They would get rid of Dan Burn for £12 million to Newcastle and would loan out Kasper Kozlowski, Deniz Undav, Jurgen Locadia, and Leo Ostegard. The positives for this window were their 2 signings, as Undav is a proven goal scorer and Kozlowski is a player with lots of potential. Their negatives were not replacing Dan Burn and not improving their strike force in this current season. They did buy a striker, but they should have tried to keep him for the rest of the season. The positives slightly outweigh the negatives, giving them a final C+ grade. I gave Burnley a B grade for their transfer window. They made 1 signing in Wout Weghorst and sold 1 player with Chris Wood. The main positive is replacing Chris Wood with a player that is better and half the price. The main negative for me is their inability to fill their multiple other needs like a right winger and a good creative midfielder. The positives outweigh the negatives here, giving them a final B grade for their window. I gave Chelsea a D+ grade for their window. They bought 1 player this window, bringing in Dylan Williams from Derby and recalled Kennedy from Flamengo. And in turn, they would get rid of no players this window. I think one positive they did this window was to not freak out and sell Lukaku this window. And they did not end up making a stupid panic buy. However, the negative for me was their decision to go with Kennedy as left wingback instead of purchasing one this window, as this could be the reason Chelsea miss out on silverware this season. The negatives outweigh the positives for me, leading to a D+ grade for Chelsea. I gave Crystal Palace a C- grade for this window. They bought 2 players, finalizing the buy option for Mateta and buying Luke Plange, a youngster from Derby. They would then loan Plange back to Derby for the rest of the season, which would be their only loss of the window. They had a pretty basic window. The positives for them was finalizing the Mateta move. However, the negative was the failure to get Van de Beek this window. The negative for me outweighs the positive, giving them a C- grade for this window. I gave Everton a B grade for this window. They brought in 5 players this window, loaning in El Ghazi and Van de Beek, and purchasing Dele Alli for a free transfer with lots of incentives. Mykolenko for $18 million and Patterson for $16 million. They would have 1 sale selling Digne for $25 million. The positives of this transfer window was the influx of young talent that can help their rebuild, and the finances involved with the Dele Alli deal, as it could reach $40 million, but for that to happen, he would have to become a top Premier League player once again. The negatives are the loss of Digne, and I do not like the El Ghazi move either. The positives outweigh the negatives, giving them a B grade. I gave Leeds a D grade for this window. They brought in no one and would loan out Cody Drama. For me, the only positives for this window were Leeds' ability to hold on to Phillips and Rafinha despite interest. The negatives are clear. A team that has been struggling needed refreshing all across the pitch, and they failed to do so. For me, their negatives outweigh their positives, having them finish with a D grade. I gave Leicester a D grade as well for their window. They would bring in no one and lose Flip Benkovic on a free. Their positives are that they were able to retain Yuri Tielemans. Their negatives were their lack of business, as they needed a center back this window and probably a midfielder as well. The negatives outweigh the positives for me, giving them a D grade. I gave Liverpool an A- grade this window. They would bring in Luis Diaz for a potential £50 million, and in turn they will loan out 2 players with Nico Williams and Nat Phillips going to the Championship. The positive for me is of course the Luis Diaz deal, as they got an amazing talent for a bargain price due to Porto's financial struggles. The only negative, which is only a very slight negative, is not finalizing the Carvajal deal. They will most likely still sign him this summer, but it would have been better to get the deal finalized to take away any possibilities of foreign clubs stepping in. For me, the positives outweigh the negatives, giving them an A- grade. I gave Man City a B grade this window. They would bring in Julian Alvarez for £18.75 million and would instantly loan him back out. They would also sell Ferran Torres for £46.7 million and Patrick Roberts for £3 million. For me, the positives are the Julian Alvarez deal, as he could become the next Sergio Aguero, and the finances involved in the Torres deal, as they got triple the amount they spent on him. The main negative is with them loaning Alvarez back to River Plate. They didn't fix their main need right now, which is striker. The positives still outweigh the negatives, giving them a B grade. I gave Man United a D grade this window. They would bring in no one, and would only lose players for loans, with Martial, Van de Beek, Diallo, and Twansby going away on loan. The main positive for them was loaning out players that needed playtime, and I liked them keeping Lingard, due to their current situation, if you know what I'm talking about, and needs of forward players. The main negatives for me is the Martial move, especially with the Greenwood situation. They could really use another quality forward now, and Martial has proven it at times to be quality for United. The other negative is not signing a DM this window, as they needed one very badly. For me, the negatives outweigh the positives, giving them a D grade. I gave Newcastle an A grade. They would bring in Matt Targett on loan, buy Bruno Guimaraes for £43 million, Chris Wood for £25 million, Dan Burn for $12 million, and Trippier for $15 million. They would lose Freddie Woodman and Jeff Hendrick to loan spells. The main positive was a window under new ownership where they brought in enough talent to avoid relegation, which makes it successful. 2 negatives were the Chris Wood deal, as their tactic to hurt a relegation side only strengthened Burnley, and only bringing in 1 center back when they needed 2 quality center halves. The positives still outweigh the negatives massively, giving them an A grade this window. I gave Norwich an F. They had the worst window, bringing in no players and loaning out Todd Cantwell, Onel Hernandez, and Jordan Hugill. There are 0 positives about this transfer window, as I think they did everything wrong. The main negatives are loaning out Cantwell when he could have helped them stay up, and the lack of business in the transfer market when they crucially needed to bring in quality to stay in the Premier League. An abysmal window where the negatives completely outweighed the positives, giving them an F grade. I gave Southampton a C-. They brought in 1 player, bringing in 41-year-old Willy Caballero on a free, to help their current keeper situation. They would only loan out 1 person, being Dan Lundelu. For me, the positive was them not spending money just to spend money under their new ownership, and noticing they have enough talent in their first team squad currently. The main negative was the only position I thought they should have bought in, which was goalkeeper, as they really could have used a new pair of hands back there. The negatives slightly outweigh the positives, giving them a C- for their average transfer window. I gave Tottenham a C+. They would loan in Dejan Kulusevski and would purchase Bentancur for £20 million. They would also get rid of Dele Alli on an initial free transfer, but a possibility of £40 million in add-ons, and would loan out Bryan Gill, Tanguy Ndombele, and Lo Celso. The main positives were the Bentancur and Kulusevski deals, and getting Lo Celso, Alli, and Ndombele off their books. The main negative was the Luis Diaz and Traore failures, as those 2 would have been incredible signings. The positives slightly outweigh the negatives, giving them a C+ rating. I gave Watford a C. They would purchase Okoye for $5 million, Kamara for $4 million, Samir for $4.5 million, Kayembe for $4 million, Kalou for $3 million, and Asprilla for $1 million. In turn, they would only lose 1 player, loaning Okoye back out. The positive and negative for Watford are essentially contradictory. They were willing to spend money and bought in players, but will they be good enough to keep them in the Premier League? With the positives and negatives being the same weight, Watford get a C. I gave West Ham a D-. They would buy and get rid of no one in their first team. The positive is they didn't lose key players like Souček, Rice, and Bowen. However, their negatives are bad. Crucial injuries in central defense and lack of depth up front needed to be addressed, and it was not. With Europa League football, FA Cup, and Premier League, they do not have the depth for all of these competitions. The lack of business this window will hurt them. The negatives way outweigh the positives, giving them a D- grade. Finally, for Wolves, I gave them a B. They would purchase Hwang Hee-chan for 14 million, Chiquinho for 3 million, Yong for 1 million, and Kawabe for 500,000. They would only loan out players, loaning out Campana, Kawabe, and Traore. The positives were the Hwang transfer and holding onto Ruben Neves despite interest. The negative was their loss of Traore and lack of adding depth in defensive areas. The positives here outweigh the negatives, giving them a B grade.